hit the subscribe button. Currently only 1.7% of my viewers are subscribe. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, I'll release an exclusive special video just for you.
The ground shuddered violently, throwing Lachlan Reed against the cold concrete of his basement workshop. The booming explosions outside rattled the city's foundation, turning Sydney's skyline into a grotesque dance of fire and smoke. Lachlan's heart pounded as he scrambled to his feet, wiping the grime from his face. The Asleal had arrived. Lachlan's rugged hands moved quickly, securing tools and blueprints into a battered rucksack. He couldn't afford to leave anything behind. Every scrap of technology, every piece of equipment was vital. The Asleal were not just invaders, they were conquerors, towering behemoths with biomechanical armor that shimmered in the dull light of Sydney's dying sun. Mocking humanity for their diminutive stature, the Asleal believed their victory would be swift and decisive. But they underestimated the resolve of those like Lachlan. Bursting out of his basement, Lachlan found himself in a war zone. The iconic Sydney Opera House was engulfed in flames, its once pristine sails now blackened ruins. Screams and the acrid smell of burning debris filled the air. His eyes darted around, searching for any sign of his family, but the chaos made it impossible. Clenching his jaw, he forced himself to move. His first priority was to survive, to fight back. The streets were teeming with Asleal soldiers, their guttural language a harsh contrast to the city's usual hum. Lachlan ducked into an alley, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His mind raced, replaying his father's lessons on bushcraft and strategy. These skills, once mere hobbies, were now crucial for survival. As he crept through the shadows, Lachlan heard a familiar voice. "Move now." Sophie Moore's urgent whisper cut through the darkness. He turned to see her, a fierce determination in her eyes, leading a small group of survivors into an abandoned subway station. He followed, feeling a glimmer of hope amidst the devastation. Inside the station, the atmosphere was tense but organized. Makeshift tech and improvised defenses filled the space, a testament to human ingenuity. Sophie, a sharp-witted resistance fighter, quickly briefed the new arrivals. "We're hitting a supply depot tonight. We need all the hands we can get." Lachlan nodded, stepping forward. "I'm in. What's the plan?" Sophie's eyes flicked to his rucksack. "You got anything in there that can help?" Lachlan pulled out a small EMP device, the product of countless sleepless nights. "This should disrupt their communications. It's not much, but it might give us an edge." Sophie's lips curled into a half-smile. "You think you can stop them with that?" "It's not about stopping them," Lachlan replied, meeting her gaze. "It's about giving us a fighting chance." As the group prepared for the raid, Lachlan couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. His thoughts drifted to his family, their faces blurring with the smoke and fire outside. But he couldn't dwell on that now. He had to focus on the task at hand. The resistance moved through the underground tunnels, a network only the locals knew well. The air was thick with tension, every step bringing them closer to the Asleal's depot. When they emerged, the sight of the alien technology was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Biomechanical crates pulsed with an eerie glow, guarded by hulking Asleal soldiers. Sophie signaled for silence. "We hit them hard and fast. Lachlan, get that EMP ready." Lachlan's hands shook slightly as he activated the device, the familiar hum of its power giving him a strange sense of calm. He placed it carefully, then nodded to Sophie. "Ready." The explosion of action that followed was a blur. The EMP sent a jolt through the air, the Asleal's communications crackling into static. Lachlan moved with agility, using his small size to navigate spaces the towering aliens couldn't. Improvised weapons and quick thinking turned the tide, the Asleal caught off guard by the ferocity of the human resistance. Lachlan's heart raced as he fought, every movement driven by a mix of fear and determination. He saw Sophie take down an Asleal with a well-placed shot, her fierce independence shining through. Together, they pushed forward, seizing the technology they needed and sabotaging the rest. As they retreated back into the tunnels, the Asliel's roars of frustration echoed behind them. The mission was a success, but Lachlan knew this was just the beginning. The Asliel were not invincible, and tonight's victory was proof. He glanced at Sophie, her eyes reflecting the same fierce resolve that burned within him. "We can't just sit here and wait for them to crush us," Sophie said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion. Lachlan nodded, his mind already racing with plans. "We hit them where it hurts. We show them we're not beaten." The resistance regrouped in the subway station, the atmosphere electric with their shared triumph. Lachlan felt a renewed sense of purpose, his path clearer than ever. The Asliel might mock their size, but they would soon learn that humanity's strength lay not in their physical stature, but in their unyielding spirit. "Move now." Sophie's urgent whisper cut through the darkness, her voice barely audible above the distant rumble of Asliel patrols. The survivors moved swiftly, their footsteps muffled by the damp earth of the underground tunnels. Lachlan led the way, his heart pounding in rhythm with the soft thuds of his boots. The tension in the air was palpable as they navigated the labyrinthine passages beneath Sydney. The Asliel's mockery still rang in Lachlan's ears, fueling his resolve. Every step brought them closer to the Asliel supply depot, a crucial target in their campaign to cripple the alien invaders. As they approached the end of the tunnel, Lachlan signaled for the group to halt. He peered around the corner, his sharp eyes scanning for any sign of movement. The depot was heavily guarded, Asliel soldiers patrolling with mechanical precision. The biomechanical armor they wore pulsed with a faint, eerie glow, casting shadows that danced menacingly on the walls. Lachlan turned to Sophie, his expression grim. "We need to disable their communications first. The EMP should give us a window to strike." Sophie nodded, her eyes reflecting the same determination. "We stick to the plan. No deviations. We can't afford any mistakes." Lachlan activated the EMP device, the hum of its power barely perceptible over the background noise. He handed it to Sophie, who slipped it into her pack with practiced ease. The group moved silently, their movements synchronized like a well-rehearsed dance. The tension mounted as they reached the outer perimeter of the depot. The air was thick with the smell of machinery and oil, mixed with the faint metallic tang of Asliel technology. Lachlan could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, every sense heightened by the imminent danger. Sophie gave the signal, and Lachlan darted forward, placing the EMP device near a critical junction. The device emitted a soft click as it activated, its energy spreading in a silent wave. The Asliel guards reacted immediately, their communication devices sputtering and going dark. "Go." Sophie's voice was sharp, cutting through the brief silence. The resistance fighters surged forward, weapons at the ready. Lachlan moved with them, his mind focused on the task at hand. He darted between crates and machinery, his smaller size allowing him to navigate the cluttered space with ease. The Asliel were formidable opponents, their size and strength making them a daunting adversary. But the resistance fought with a desperation born of necessity, their movements coordinated and precise. Lachlan's heart raced as he engaged in the skirmish, using improvised weapons and quick thinking to stay ahead of the towering aliens. A loud crash echoed through the depot as Sophie brought down a stack of crates, creating a barrier that slowed the Asliel advance. Lachlan took advantage of the distraction, moving to sabotage the alien machinery. His hands flew over the controls, ripping out wires and planting explosive charges. "Cover me!" Lachlan shouted over his shoulder, his voice strained with effort. Sophie and the others formed a defensive line, their weapons crackling with energy as they held the Asliel at bay. The explosions that followed were deafening, the shockwaves reverberating through the depot. Lachlan felt the ground trembled beneath his feet, the force of the blasts knocking him off balance. He scrambled to his feet, his ears ringing, and saw the Asliel falling back, their forces in disarray. "Fall back." Sophie's command was clear and decisive. The resistance fighters retreated in a coordinated withdrawal, moving swiftly back into the tunnels. Lachlan covered their retreat, his eyes scanning for any sign of pursuit. Back in the relative safety of the underground, the group paused to catch their breath. The adrenaline still coursed through Lachlan's veins, his mind racing with the implications of their success. They had struck a significant blow, but the war was far from over. Sophie approached, her face flushed with exertion. "Good work, Lachlan. We couldn't have done it without you." Lachlan shook his head, a grim smile playing on his lips. "It's not over yet. We need to keep hitting them, keep them off balance." Sophie nodded, her expression serious. "We've got new intel. The Asliel are planning an assault on a major human settlement. We need to warn them and prepare a defense." Lachlan's heart sank at the news. The stakes were higher than ever, the danger more imminent. But he also felt a renewed sense of purpose, a clarity of mission that steeled his resolve. "We can't let them succeed," Lachlan said, his voice firm. "We'll gather what we need and head out immediately." As they regrouped and made their plans, Lachlan couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Asliel were powerful, but so were the humans' determination and ingenuity. They would fight, not just for survival, but for a future free from the shadow of alien oppression. The group moved through the tunnels once more, their path illuminated by the dim, flickering lights of makeshift torches. The air was thick with the promise of conflict, every step bringing them closer to the next confrontation. Lachlan knew the road ahead would be perilous, but he also knew they had the strength to persevere. And as they emerged into the night, ready to face whatever came next, Lachlan felt a spark of hope. They were small, but they were mighty. And they would not be defeated. An eerie silence enveloped the underground hideout as Lachlan's makeshift communication device crackled to life. "We've got movement," Sophie reported, her voice taut with urgency. "The Asliel are mobilizing." The news hit Lachlan like a physical blow. He tightened his grip on the crude map of their next target, the human settlement the Asliel planned to obliterate. The fate of countless lives now rested on their ability to intercept and thwart the alien assault. "All right, everyone," Lachlan said, raising his voice to address the gathered resistance fighters. "This is it. We know what's at stake. We need to move fast and hit hard." The room buzzed with a mix of fear and determination. Lachlan's eyes met those of each fighter, drawing strength from their shared resolve. Every one of them had lost something, someone, to the Asliel. Their collective grief forged a bond, unbreakable and fierce. The journey to the settlement was fraught with tension. They navigated through dense underbrush and over rocky terrain, the night sky above a silent witness to their grim march. The cool air was heavy with the scent of earth and foliage, every rustle and snap amplifying their anxiety. As they neared their destination, Lachlan called for a halt. "We need eyes on their approach," he said, pointing to a vantage point atop a nearby hill. "Sophie, take a team and set up surveillance. Report back on their movements." Sophie nodded, selecting a few seasoned fighters to accompany her. Lachlan watched them disappear into the shadows, a pang of worry twisting in his gut. He trusted Sophie implicitly, but the stakes were higher than ever. The minutes stretched into an agonizing wait. Lachlan's mind raced with potential scenarios, each more harrowing than the last. His thoughts were interrupted by a soft rustle as Sophie returned, her expression grim. "They're close," she reported. "A large force, heavily armed. They're not taking any chances." Lachlan's jaw tightened. "Then neither are we. Everyone, positions. Remember, our goal is to delay and disrupt. Buy the settlement enough time to evacuate." The resistance fighters moved with practiced efficiency, setting up defensive positions and traps. Lachlan took a deep breath, the cool night air filling his lungs. He could hear the distant hum of the Asliel machinery growing louder, the ground beginning to vibrate beneath their feet. The first contact was swift and brutal. The Asliel, towering and relentless, advanced with a terrifying precision. Lachlan's team sprang into action, utilizing their guerrilla tactics to sow confusion and chaos. Explosions lit up the night, the sharp cracks of gunfire mingling with the roars of the alien invaders. Lachlan fought with a ferocity he didn't know he possessed. His movements were a blur of calculated strikes and swift dodges. He used the terrain to his advantage, leading Asliel soldiers into traps and ambushes. Each victory, no matter how small, fueled his determination. "Lachlan, behind you." Sophie's warning came just in time. He spun around, narrowly avoiding a crushing blow from an Asliel warrior. The alien's eyes burned with rage as it swung its massive arm again. Lachlan ducked and rolled, his fingers closing around a discarded weapon. He aimed and fired, the shot hitting the Asliel's exposed joint. The creature howled in pain, staggering back. Lachlan seized the opportunity, delivering a decisive blow that sent the alien crashing to the ground. "Nice shot," Sophie said, her voice breathless but steady. "We're holding them, but just barely." Lachlan nodded, wiping sweat and grime from his face. "We need to keep the pressure on. We can't let them regroup." The battle raged on, each passing moment a testament to the human spirit. The resistance fighters fought with everything they had, their courage and ingenuity pitted against the Asliel's superior strength and technology. Amidst the chaos, Lachlan noticed something, an opportunity. The Asliel command unit had moved closer, their leader barking orders in their guttural language. If they could take out the command unit, it could tip the scales in their favor. "Sophie, with me," Lachlan called, motioning for her to follow. "We're going after their leader." They moved swiftly, using the terrain and the ongoing skirmishes to cover their approach. Lachlan's heart pounded as they closed in on the command unit, the alien leader's imposing figure becoming clearer. "This is it," Lachlan whispered, his grip tightening on his weapon. "Ready?" Sophie nodded, her eyes steely with resolve. "Let's do this." They launched their attack with precision, targeting the command unit with a barrage of fire and explosives. The Asliel leader roared in fury, his guards moving to protect him. Lachlan and Sophie fought side by side, their coordinated assault overwhelming the alien defenses. In a final, desperate push, Lachlan managed to land a critical blow, his weapon piercing the Asliel leader's armor. The alien's roar of pain echoed through the battlefield, its forces faltering as their command structure crumbled. "We did it," Sophie said, her voice a mix of relief and exhaustion. Lachlan nodded, his own exhaustion catching up with him. "For now. But this isn't over. We need to regroup and plan our next move." As the dust settled and the night grew quiet once more, Lachlan felt a renewed sense of hope. They had turned the tide, proving that the Asliel were not invincible. The fight was far from over, but they had shown that humanity's spirit was unbreakable. And as they prepared to face whatever came next, Lachlan knew one thing for certain: they would never stop fighting. "Hold the line." Lachlan's voice rang out over the chaos, piercing through the cacophony of battle. The final assault on the Asliel stronghold had begun, and every human fighter knew this was their last chance to reclaim their world. The sky above was a swirling tempest of ash and smoke, the air thick with the smell of burning metal and ozone. The resistance had pushed the Asliel to their central base, a sprawling fortress of alien architecture that loomed ominously against the darkened horizon. Lachlan's heart pounded as he led his team through the crumbling city streets, each step bringing them closer to the heart of the alien occupation. Sophie moved beside him, her face set in grim determination. "We've got to take out their central power core," she said, her voice steady despite the fear lurking in her eyes. "It's the only way to disable their defenses." Lachlan nodded, his mind racing with the stakes. "We'll split into two teams. One to create a diversion, the other to infiltrate and destroy the core." As the resistance fighters divided into groups, Lachlan took a moment to steady his nerves. This was it, the culmination of all their efforts, their sacrifices. He caught Sophie's eye, drawing strength from her unwavering resolve. "Stay sharp," he said, his voice low but firm. "We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for everyone we've lost, and everyone who's still counting on us." Sophie nodded, her gaze fierce. "Let's end this." The assault began with a coordinated barrage of explosions, shaking the ground and lighting up the night sky. The Asliel responded with brutal efficiency, their forces surging to defend the fortress. Lachlan led his team through the chaos, using the debris and ruins for cover as they advanced toward the power core. The fortress interior was a maze of alien technology, the walls pulsing with a faint, otherworldly glow. The air hummed with energy, the sound almost deafening in its intensity. Lachlan's senses were on high alert, every shadow a potential threat. "We're close," Sophie whispered, her eyes scanning the dimly lit corridors. "The core should be just ahead." They moved cautiously, the tension mounting with each step. As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a group of Asliel soldiers. The ensuing firefight was fierce and frantic, the corridor erupting in a blaze of gunfire and energy blasts. Lachlan fought with everything he had, his movements precise and lethal. "We can't hold them off forever," one of the fighters shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. Lachlan knew they had to act quickly. "Push forward. We need to reach the core now." The resistance fighters surged ahead, their determination unyielding. Lachlan and Sophie led the charge, their weapons blazing. They burst into the power core chamber, a massive room dominated by a towering structure that pulsed with raw energy. "There it is," Sophie said, her voice a mix of awe and resolve. "We need to plant the charges and get out." As they set the explosives, the ground shook violently, a deep rumble echoing through the fortress. The Asliel were throwing everything they had into their defense. Lachlan's hands moved swiftly, his focus razor-sharp. "Charges set," he called out. "Everyone, fall back." The team retreated, racing against the clock as the charges ticked down. The fortress walls seemed to close in around them, the air growing thick with tension and the smell of impending destruction. Lachlan's heart pounded as they made their way back through the labyrinthine corridors. They burst out into the open air just as the charges detonated. The ground heaved, and a deafening explosion tore through the fortress, sending shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. The power core erupted in a blaze of light, the energy cascading outward in a blinding display. Lachlan shielded his eyes, the sheer force of the blast knocking him off his feet. When he looked up, the fortress was crumbling, its defenses shattered. The Asliel forces were in disarray, their lines breaking as the humans pressed the advantage. "We did it," Sophie breathed, her voice filled with disbelief and triumph. Lachlan got to his feet, his body aching but his spirit soaring. "It's not over yet," he said, his gaze fixed on the retreating Asliel. "We need to finish this." The resistance fighters rallied, their morale boosted by the destruction of the power core. They pushed forward with renewed vigor, driving the Asliel back. The aliens fought desperately, but their resolve was faltering in the face of the human onslaught. In the midst of the chaos, Lachlan spotted the Asliel commander, Drax, rallying his troops. The towering alien was a formidable figure, his presence a stark reminder of the threat they still faced. Lachlan knew this was their chance to end it once and for all. "Sophie, cover me," he said, determination hardening his voice. "I'm going after Drax." Without waiting for a response, Lachlan charged toward the commander, his weapon at the ready. The battlefield seemed to narrow, everything fading into the background as he focused on his target. Drax turned, his eyes locking onto Lachlan with a look of pure hatred. The confrontation was brutal and relentless. Lachlan fought with every ounce of strength he had, matching Drax's power with his own agility and cunning. The alien commander was a force of nature, but Lachlan's determination was unbreakable. With a final, desperate effort, Lachlan managed to land a decisive blow, his weapon striking true. Drax staggered, a look of shock and rage contorting his features. The alien fell, his massive body hitting the ground with a resounding thud. A stunned silence fell over the battlefield. The Asliel, seeing their leader defeated, began to retreat in disarray. The humans, spurred on by their victory, pressed the attack, driving the invaders from their world. Lachlan stood over the fallen commander, his chest heaving with exertion. Sophie approached, her face a mixture of relief and admiration. "You did it," she said softly. "We did it," Lachlan corrected, his voice hoarse but triumphant. "Together." As the sun began to rise over the shattered landscape, the remaining resistance fighters gathered, their faces lit with a mixture of exhaustion and hope. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. The cost had been high, but they had reclaimed their world. Lachlan looked out over the battlefield, the first light of dawn breaking through the smoke and ash. He felt a surge of pride and a deep, abiding resolve. The fight had been long and hard, but they had proven that humanity's spirit could never be extinguished. And as they began the arduous task of rebuilding, Lachlan knew one thing for certain: they had not just survived. They had prevailed. And they would never forget the strength and unity that had carried them through.